meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have
And
a
hey,
time
living, how you
of
doing?
your
How you
life because
feeling, folks? Back for another episode of City Night Lights. Of course, this is brought to you by the Idiots Podcast Network. Now, it's been a while, been doing some other things, getting stuff done. Now, we're gonna have a nice little episode, a little catch up on the Mets' current off-season situation. Just kind of wanted to talk about both sides of the ball, but what's been done, what hasn't been done, what we should kind of be expecting this season to look like. Is I feel like a lot of the Mets free agency is kind of winding to a close now. It will be interesting. There are a couple things that could still happen, although some may be significantly more unlikely than others. Now, what I really want to get into first is I want to talk about first the free agents the Mets have acquired so far in this. Acquired so far in this offseason. Now, I would say the Mets' two big signings were definitely Harrison Bader and Luis Severino. Definitely in terms of dollar value, probably paid about $22-23 million for those two guys in this upcoming season. So, money talks. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how those two guys play, as well as, we picked up Sean Manaea, Adrian Hauser, and then really more on the back end. We did see Jorge Lopez get picked up, a 1 year, $2 million deal I definitely like. I'm a huge fan of that. A little Joey Wendell action. Tyrone Taylor came over with Adrian Hauser. I believe that was a trade. And then we also just have some extra relief filling in the back end. So, sorry about that. A little awkward with the way I have my notebook. But, so that's currently who we've gone after. I would definitely say we've made an attempt to at least do something. We're not standing still, which I can definitely appreciate. But it definitely feels a little awkward. Our team still feels a little weird. So we'll get right into that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up into, I'm going to break it up into batting and pitching. I'm going to do the outfield first. Then we're going to get into, more about our infield. I'll, do a little synopsis at the end and then talk about free agent targets I think we might still be looking for, what our outlook looks like. But I just kind of wanted to talk about how our outlook is now with all these signings and really kind of letting a lot of the free agent dust settle, especially for the Mets. I don't think that we're going to do a lot more here in free agency, just based on the way they've been doing this free agency. It doesn't feel like there's a lot left in the tank for us in terms of spending. I don't think that we're really going to go out there and do all too much more unless something happens to fall in our lap. And, maybe we can get David Stearns to surprise us a little bit. That would be very nice. Now, we'll get right into it. We're going to start talking about the outfield. Now, between Nimmo, Marte, and Bader, I feel like we have a pretty solid defensive outfield. We have three guys who can all really slot into that center field position, which is nice. We can give our outfielders some off days. It allows them to get an off day in left and right field and then come back into the fold. Now, Marte is a guy who obviously I don't really see playing a lot of center field in the future. The guy's hitting up on 35 going on 36, so I don't know how much more gas he has left in the tank. Now, I hope he has a lot more than kind of what he showed last season. We'll see how he does this year. I hope that he's, going to be around for a full 160, but I doubt it. As long as we can get, 100 to 120 games out of him, I'd call that quality, which is unfortunate, but true. I would definitely say all three of these guys hit for contact. That's nothing phenomenal, but it definitely helps that they're all at least trying to hit the damn ball and putting it in play. So I can appreciate that. I will say, Nimmo's a lefty. He's the only real lefty. He's not a big stolen base guy, but if we can get Marte there for a full season as well as Bader, I could see 40, 50 steals between those two guys, not including Nimmo. And Nimmo's really an extra bases type of guy with his speed. So it'll be good just to see some more stolen bags from the Mets this season, especially from that outfield. That would be exciting. Now, I do want to say that we do have some issues in the outfield, and I'm also going to just lump in DH with this real quick, just because, to be honest with you, I feel like it fit better here than anywhere else in this episode. So, I don't think there's a lot of power in the outfield. Now, it's not anything to necessarily scoff at. Fine. I mean, Nimmo definitely has a little bit of pop to his bat, which is nice. Was third on the team last year in home runs. I'm sorry, fourth on the team last year in home runs behind Francisco Alvarez. Love to see that. Now, we're not looking for him to have 40 home runs, so I would say definitely with our outfield kind of sitting the way it is, I'm not necessarily the most worried about having a ton of pop in our outfield. Now, between our current outfield setup, it looks like, we only had another 12 home runs, so I would say 36 home runs between three players. That is a little rough. I would like to see some more production maybe out of the power department from Harrison Bader, someone who I really think could have a nice bounce back season, a guy who in a new space, new place, still in New York, but I think going to the Mets just takes a little bit of pressure off. So I like Harrison Bader. I think that's a guy that we can potentially watch have some huge pop potential this year, maybe become just a much better player, become a guy that we can look to sign in the future years. Now, he is fairly young. He's going to go on his age 30 season this year, but he is probably the signing I'm most hopeful for right now is Harrison Bader. I think he just has a lot of extra potential, and I say that in terms of offensive side of the ball. I like to, I really want to root for the offense. We didn't sign it really anybody else, but now we're going to get into the DH. Or actually, before that, I'm sorry, I'm a little all over the place, folks. We'll do one more point about the outfield, and it's just the fact that they have an issue staying on the field. We saw this, although Nimmo was pretty healthy last year, we've seen this in the past from Nimmo. And I would also definitely argue, we've seen this in the past from Starling Marte. Just, I need these guys to play, because if they're not going to play, it's just going to make the Mets season miserable. We don't really have a lot of extra outfield depth at the current moment. We're just trying to make stuff work. It would be nice if we could get Harrison Bader to just play 100 games. I think the sad thing is that we have to look at three outfielders and go, hey, I know it's possible for you to hit more than 100 games, but I really need you to make sure you hit more than 100 games. So that being said, I don't like thinking about health in terms of our three outfielders. And then I'm just going to throw in our DH, DJ Stewart. He's also, an outfielder on occasion, plays DH mainly. I think he's terrible. I don't know why we have him on the team in terms of being, he's a lefty bat. I get it. But, at that point, wouldn't you just be happier throwing Omar Narvaez in the DH spot and letting him hit? I don't know. I just don't think DJ Stewart has any pop, really. I don't think this guy has really anything going on, anything special. So yeah, that's my DJ Stewart take. All right. So we'll move on to the infield. This is just going to encompass everything else but pitching. So, I would definitely say the Mets have a solid middle infield as it sits right now with McNeil and Lindor. So I'm not worried about that. Between Pete, Alvarez, and Lindor, really I don't need the pop out of Lindor. I would rather Lindor just hit for contact. We have some other guys who, if they just hit the damn ball, we could see upwards of 20 home runs, which can just across the board truly help the team. So, excuse me. I think if we see Lindor sit about 25 home runs, I don't think that hurts anybody. I think that's totally fine. I think we might see Francisco Alvarez have a little uptick in home runs this year. And obviously Pete Alonso, that's our guy. He's going to smash some home runs. Always love to have him around. Hopefully he could pull that average up a little bit. But if you're going to hit 46 home runs, I guess I'll take it. Shit. So, I will also say Pete is our rock. I know we avoided arbitration with him for 1 year. I think it was $20 million. I hope that we do re-sign Pete Alonso just to a long-term deal. That's my guy. So, all right. Now, some of the issues we do have on the infield side, or, just in the infield, we see Brett Beatty in that third base position really be up for grabs. Now, Beatty didn't really do what anyone expected him to do in terms of taking a hold of that third base spot. He wasn't necessarily great in the field or really at the bat. Now, I do think Brett Beatty can get better. He had, let's see, what did he have last year? What did he have? All right, so he had 9 home runs, 34 RBIs, hit 212 through 350 plate appearances, or at-bats with 389 plate appearances. Yeah, he didn't really do shit. So in all honesty, I would like to see Brett Beatty just, get the twig in his bat going. He's a guy I could see the Mets slot into that outfield slot especially with all their prospects coming up, a lot of them being infielders, middle infielders, guys we can slot into that third base slot, maybe potentially see Beatty, a guy with just worse defensive capabilities, moved into the outfield, one of the corners, guy who does have a decent arm, just makes it easy. I think that's definitely not something to be afraid of in the future for Brett Beatty. Something that we've seen in the past, and definitely wouldn't shock me. But I want to see him really get the twig going. Without Brett Beatty getting the twig going, he's just one of the other gajillion prospects the Mets have at this point that they're going to have to run through and either trade or develop. I don't know what their goal is at this point. Seems a little odd, but I hope that they got to use it or lose it. Brett Beatty, we'll see what you got. So overall, the one thing I want to talk a little bit about the overall Mets team. I would definitely say the good things that we have is our outfield defense is pretty solid. Our middle infield defense is solid. Pete is just awesome at the dish. And then I would say we definitely have a lot of guys on that offensive side of the ball with just a lot of extra potential this year. A lot guys with some positive regression, guys with just all in all good opportunities to just, really move up to that next stage of their career. And I would argue those guys are Alvarez, Brett Beatty, Harrison Bader, Mark Vientos, and even Jeff McNeil. I'd like to see a bounce back season from Jeff McNeil. So that's another thing. Outside of that, I guess we'll see what happens with the Mets. Their back end of the lineups are really going to be where it needs to shine. We'll have to see if Marte and Alvarez and Beatty and Bader really can pull this all together. Maybe we see some Joey Wendell action in there at third base. But we really need to pull that back end of the order together. Now, the one thing I would like to say is that, all right, we'll just get right into this. The one other thing is that Mets definitely need to hit with runners in scoring position. That's been a huge issue for the Mets for many years. I would like to see them hit with runners in scoring position. Now, some of the issues we definitely have, that's definitely one of them, is hitting with runners in scoring position. I would definitely say our corner infielders defensively are pretty weak in terms of Beatty and Pete. Pete's been getting better at defense, but I wouldn't call him an all-star defensive player. Defensively, Alvarez isn't necessarily phenomenal, so we'll see how that develops. And I hate DJ Stewart. I think he's ass. So we'll move on to potential free agents I think the Mets are going to still look at, but we'll see what happens. Some of them, what I'm going to do is we'll talk about the more questionable ones first, and then I'll differentiate the ones I think are more solid. So in terms of being more questionable to sign, I think a guy like Jock Peterson, lefty outfielder, he might just run our bill too high, a guy that we're not going to want to go out there and pay. And really someone I really don't think is super duper worth it in terms of what he's going to be able to give your team. I think he's going to hit, 240 like DJ Stewart. So if you're going to hit 240 and hit me 15 to 25 home runs, I don't think I need that for $15 million. So I think that guy is just not something we should be looking at. I also would like to say that, maybe we want to take a shot at Cody Bellinger. Definitely something I'm not afraid of. I think that would be a really cool opportunity for the Mets. But just looking at the way our team currently sits, I feel like he'd be getting a lot of run, probably in the outfield when he can, but just mostly at DH, I feel like is where he would end up shining. Maybe we go, hey, do you want to try out third base? I think that would be a stupid thing to do. But, with the aging Starling Marte, and I think the Mets looking to move on from him as soon as possible. Even with Harrison Bader being there, maybe we see him get traded midway through the year, depending on how the Mets season goes. But I think acquiring a Cody Bellinger would be cool, but maybe currently the price doesn't seem to be sitting well in the Mets fandom, in the Mets general managing system and their front office. So I would say it's probably a pass on Cody Bellinger for right now, which is unfortunate. Now, to get on to some more really realistic signings, I would argue, I think a guy like Justin Turner, guy you could have play corner, corner infield defense, kind of like a Joey Wendell. Maybe you don't want him because you already signed a guy like Joey Wendell. I could understand that. Could get him fairly cheap. Would be cool to be back in New York, but maybe it's just not worth it. I'm gonna keep moving on down the line. I think a guy that might just have more pop potential than DJ Stewart, a guy that we've at least seen do it in the past, would be Jesse Winker. Jesse Winker has been he's been a lefty masher. That's what he is. And really, I can understand wanting to plug in more lefties because a lot of our younger guys in the system happen to be righties, guys that are going to be MLB ready within the next year or two. Between younger Acuna, Ronnie Mauricio, and Alex Ramirez. They're all either switch hitters or righties, so I really think that, maybe the Mets could plug in another pure hitting lefty here. I think that although Jesse Winker's defense is terrible, at least it gives you another option to throw him in the defensive area, and I think he's no better at defense than DJ Stewart, no worse either. So I don't think Jesse Winker's a bad person to plug into that, DH role. Now, another person I would argue is also, this is what we'll do. We'll talk about the other two DH roles. I think that would be solid for the Mets to go out there and look at. I think JD Martinez might be too high for our payroll at the current moment with the way the situation sits. Maybe we decide, hey, we're going to pay you big bucks, trade you midway through the year if we suck. But I like JD Martinez. I really would love to see him be the Mets DH, but I doubt they're going to do that just because they want to get the young guys up and get them in and get them at bats. And I think that DH spot is going to be the way they're going to do it. So that leaves me with Michael Brantley, another lefty bat. A lot of contact out of him, been solid for 15 years now. Long-time Astro, long-time Cleveland Indian. So I would not mind Michael Brantley coming to the club. I think that's another solid bat. Now, the other two bats I'll just mention for, just pretty much for passing. Two guys I personally like. One guy I personally like. One guy I think might fit the Mets well, but might not be worth it at this just current point in time. I think Tony Kemp is the guy that might not be worth it for the Mets at this current point in time. We went out there, signed a guy like Joey Wendell, so I think Tony Kemp's a guy we could pass on quite easily. But Whit Merrifield could play the outfield. He could play a little bit infield. He could play some DH. Although he's not a home run hitting guy, I think Whit Merrifield adds a lot to this team that seemingly loves to play small ball. Now that we have, I would argue, I guess, 3 power hitters in terms of Alvarez, Lindor, and Alonso. I would just like to see, another guy who can really steal the bags, get around the bases, do something just phenomenal. I think I think Whit Merrifield would be an awesome guy for the Mets to plug in and even, get a little bit of work in the infield. If let's say someone in the outfield gets hurt, let's say we see Marte go down and all of a sudden we're like, hey, we could throw Whit Merrifield in the outfield. Let's say, Jeff McNeil gets hurt. Hey, we could throw Whit at second base. And that's also another guy that, he is 35, but a guy that we could look to trade is something that we've really been doing a lot this year, signing guys on 1-2 year deals with club options and just putting ourselves in a position where we can trade these guys at the deadline with pretty much no issue. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the pitching side of baseball, especially a more, I would argue, interesting side of the Mets offseason, something that they definitely tried to tackle, but I don't know if they necessarily did a great job of it, but definitely a job. Now, what I'm going to do is, instead of giving, I'll give you the benefits of the Mets staff, and then I'm going to go into the issues. I think there's a lot more issues than benefits, but just to get it all started, in terms of benefits, I think all 5 starters have potential upside. And what? I can even move that out and say 7 starters have potential upside. Kodai Senga, came off a great rookie year. I hope that he can build on that. That would be awesome. Currently the Mets ace. We have Jose Quintana, who's had some early career success, but really haven't seen him have, he's had mid to milding success. We'll see how he goes. Only pitched 75 innings last year, but he did pitch to a 3.57. So let's hope that can remain true in this next year. Maybe we can get one more good year out of Jose Quintana would be awesome. Luis Severino, guy that has, been injured but has big potential upside to just splash. He's had some good seasons in the past when healthy. Same thing with Sean Manaea. He's been a guy with the A's who had a couple pop potentials. He just had a couple pop-off seasons. He's looked good in the past. Finally, another lefty. Him and Quintana evens out the rotation a little bit in terms of lefties. And Adrian Hauser, another guy from Milwaukee, came over from, David Stern's obviously looking at his Milwaukee guys. Now, clearly not my Milwaukee guy, which I'll talk about a little later, but I don't think Adrian Hauser's a bad signing at all. I think between him, Manaea, Sevy, and Quintana, I think they're all kind of shots in the dark, and they just have upside potential. I think that's really what we're betting on here. I think we know Kodai Senga has upside potential, so I don't think it's really worth even including him, but I would argue 2 other guys that might have some potential to make some starts for the Mets this year and really even potentially solidify themselves into the rotation or out of the rotation could be, David Peterson or Tyler McGill. Now, David Peterson's had a couple good years in the MLB, a couple bad years in the MLB. He is, 28, currently dealing with a hip surgery. So we'll see what happens with him. I think he might come up sooner than later. He might do something. God only knows. Same thing with Tyler McGill. He's same age, 28. Now, God only knows what he's going to do. But it'd be interesting just to see what the hell's going to happen with that. Maybe we get a little something working. I don't know. It's gonna, regardless, it's gonna be interesting with the starting rotation. So outside of that, I think we have 3 solid relievers in Drew Smith, Brooks Raley, and Edwin Diaz. And you know what? At least, and I'll throw Joey Lucchesi in this. We have 8 starting pitchers, so at least we do have some starting pitcher depth. That's always great to have in the rotation. That makes me feel confident. So always love that. All right, so now we're going to get into the issues because I have plenty of issues with the Mets pitching staff. I would definitely say there's no real high-end pitching prospect, not really existing for the Mets. I mean, we have guys like Mike Vassell, Christian Scott, and Justin Jarvis, 3 guys who might be ready in the next 2 years, probably who seemingly show the most potential, but I don't think they show any potential, really. I don't think any Mets, pitcher that's currently in their minor league system has shown any great potential that's going to be any crazy star. Something that we desperately need is another young gun head of the staff. I mean, I love Kodai Senga, but the guy's going to go already on, 30, age 31 in his second season of the MLB. I would just like to have a younger guy that might be able to carry the torch for a little longer. I don't think we really have any options in terms of extra youth down below, so that's a little nerve-wracking. I will say every starter does have question marks. Yeah, they have a lot of potential to be good, but they also have a lot of potential to be kind of shit. So Quintana could be cool, but he just needs to play, and his stats since 2016 to 2022 they look kind of the guy doesn't look phenomenal. He doesn't bounce off the page to you like anything more than a true innings eater, like I think we originally signed him to be. Now, that worries me being our number 2 pitcher. Now we'll move on to Sevy. Sevy's had some health issues over the past couple of years. Now, he has played recently. Let me bring it up real quick. I know Luis Severino's actually played a little bit more in the last 2 years. I know he was doing a lot of rehab starts with the Yankees. Now, did play, he had 19 starts, or 18 starts this year, and 19 starts the year prior. I would like to see 100 innings out of him between 2 years. Now, he has had some healthy years in the past where he has been very, very effective for the New York Yankees, 2017, 2018. Now, I think it's possible for him to get back to that, but maybe just a little change of scenery moving from, the Yankees to the Mets might actually help out. And I think currently, he's probably our number 2 pitcher in this entire rotation is Luis Severino. Probably the guy with the least amount of question marks outside of just, saying the word health. So, we'll move on. Talk about Sean Manaea. Now, Sean Manaea, he's not a bad pitcher. I believe he played for the Giants last year. Not coming off one of the best seasons of his career. Pitched to a 4.44, 117 innings. Now, my big thing is that obviously he only had 10 starts last year, so that's a little interesting. Played a bunch of extra years. He had a mid-year in San Diego the year before that, but has had a couple great years in Oakland, something I hope the Mets could tap into. He might truly be the inning eater on this team. I don't mind it from a lefty standpoint, but to have 2 lefties who are inning eaters just kind of feels a little scary. And then we'll move on to Adrian Hauser. Now, Adrian Hauser is not the Brewer I wanted that was available, but it's the Brewer we got. A guy who's shown a lot of career success, has only pitched over, he's had 2 years of pretty much 4.0 ball, which is these last 2 years in Milwaukee. He pitched to a 4.12 and a 4.73 over 100 innings, respectfully. So we'll see how that unfolds. The year before that, he only pitched 142 innings to a 3.22, so that's nice to see, and has done it one other time where he pitched to a 3.72 through 111. So I'd like to see what Adrian Hauser has in the tank. Guy I'm definitely interested in seeing how good he is for the Mets. Guy with another guy with a lot of upside. I think between Senga, Severino, and Hauser, I think that's really where a lot of our starting pitching is going to have to come from this year. A lot of our trust. So my relief, I have no trust in it. Bad, just bad. I don't think Michael Tonkin is very good, and he leaves me a lot to be desired. Having not played in the MLB from 2018 to 2022, I did not do much research as to figure out why. I just looked at his stats, they're really not that great anyway, so don't like seeing that name in the depth chart in terms of the bullpen. Jorge Lopez, a guy who's been moved around a lot over the last couple of years, has had some inconsistency issues over his career, but a guy I think, you give him a year or two in New York, you let him settle in a little bit, I think he could really be nice in terms of a late season playoff run, or even potentially if he gets hot early, we could see him being traded out the door for, maybe a starting pitching prospect, something of the sort. Sean Reed-Foley, I don't know if he's good. Can he just pitch like 100 innings? Okay, I'm sorry. You haven't pitched 100 innings since 2018. Sorry, I just have a bunch of notes on here, fellas. All right. Sean Reed-Foley, let's see what you got. I remember looking at your stats and not liking them. Okay, so you've played for 6 seasons. You have a total of 110 innings pitched through 6 seasons. I need you to pitch like some innings, buddy. You don't have a great career ERA. The only time your ERA has really been good is when you pitched less than 10 innings. Yeah, so no confidence in Sean Reed-Foley. I did look up Phil Bickford. Looks like, kind of like a project guy like Sean Reed-Foley. Project. That's never a good sign. And then Austin Adams, reliever who I think is pretty mid at best. Definitely a big problem we have in the bullpen is that we only have one lefty in Brooks Raley, so we do run into some issues there when we only have one lefty. All right, so this is what we're going to do. I want to get into, the guys I think might be good potential free agents for the Mets to look at in terms of, looking at a guy to fill out this bullpen. I really don't think they need too much else in the starting rotation, but I think the bullpen could really use, I think in total this team needs about 3 signings. I think 2 in the bullpen and maybe 1 in terms of picking up just a real DH or someone who has real potential to be a DH. If not to do that, I think you still need to pick up 3 total free agents and then just truly invest in the relief depth chart there. So in terms of relievers, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to talk about the one guy I really like who I don't think we're going to sign and might not be a reliever. And then I'm going to talk about the 3 other pitchers that have a little bit of a weird stipulation in this. So I'll talk about them, and then after that we'll talk about the guys who I really think are great relieving targets for the Mets to go after this offseason. So first I want to get into Eric Lauer, a pitcher who I think's had pretty decent success on Milwaukee, a guy who's fairly young and not asking for a ton of money, but I think has a lot of potential in the MLB. I'm surprised David Stearns didn't go after him. I guess that wasn't his guy. So, just wanted to put that out there. I like Eric Lauer. I've liked him for a minute. I think he's a solid player. I think that's a guy that, not a lot of teams should be looking to pass up like they have been. I think that, just about every team should be talking to Eric Lauer and going, hey, you're pretty young, you're pretty decent, let's see what you got in the tank. I think you might have something decent, especially on you can get him on what feels like a 5-year, $50 million contract, which could be quite lucrative for what he is currently. All right, done with my Eric Lauer rant. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit weirder part of this free agent period. I think something we don't see enough in the MLB is we don't see starters, kind of in their elder years, really revert to relief pitching and even being willing to take that role. I think 3 guys the Mets might want to look at in some potential relief out of the pen work would be, Corey Kluber, a guy at the end of his career, might just want to pitch. Hey, we'll give you a spot in the bullpen, see what you got. Maybe you end up doing a long relief game. You end up starting 1 game in a season or 2 games, or you end up pitching 3 to 6 innings, 1 crazy game. But I think having a long relief pitcher as well as maybe just an effective relief pitcher in terms of a starter like that could be beneficial. Another guy I think that we could see step into that role would be Noah Syndergaard, a guy who's just kind of fell off the map in terms of being a good pitcher. over the last few years. You know, I really do wish the best for Noah Syndergaard. He's just not been the same player since, he left the Mets in 2021. And honestly, I feel bad for him, but I think the best way for him to really get back into this, back into stardom, would just be to take it easy. The guy, I think he got too big for his own body, and then we've just kind of seen it cause a huge physical collapse for the man, as well as, he's just not able to get that same output that he was once able to do from his age 22 to 26 season. Now, I think putting him in the pen might be a little bit of a work in project with him, work in process. But I think that Noah Syndergaard could be just a cool little piece, to put out into that bullpen and see what he has left. I think that just might potentially revitalize his career. And the last guy I would argue could be put into this role is definitely a Carlos Carrasco. I think you could put him out there for 2 innings every couple days and just have him be a 2-inning, flex reliever. I kind of like the idea of that. I think that he could be very valuable in that way, just pitching 2 innings a game and getting out of there, pitching an inning, or just having the potential to pitch 4 innings if we need it. I don't think that we're ever going to see Carlos Carrasco do that again, nor should we, but I think that just is a great opportunity for the Mets to have and for other teams to have, and something that we should just look at and try to take advantage of, reach out and see what they say. Because, these are 3 guys who, one's at the end of his career, one's in the middle of his career, which might be the end, even though he's 30, because he's just had a lot of, career troubles. And then Carlos Carrasco, a guy who's overcome cancer and some pretty crazy things and has been able to pitch at a high level in this league. And, now at his age 35, 36 season, might be getting into his later years and wanting to take a little bit easier on his body, maybe increase the longevity of his career by doing something like this. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the last bunch of relievers I think really just have a good opportunity for the Mets just to provide, just good relief. It's really all you can do out of the pen, right? Just provide good relief, guys who I think are solid, especially a couple lefties. Something that the Mets sorely need out of the pen is lefties. So to get right into it, what I'm going to talk about is I like Drew Pomerantz. I think Drew Pomerantz is definitely a solid player, someone that for a good couple of years, I would say, has just played well as a reliever. Not everybody's going to know this man's name, but he's just been an effective player. Now, I would say, let's see, over the past 3 years, so currently it looks like he hasn't pitched in the last 2 years, is going to be currently at the age of 35, might have been some injury, I'm not currently sure, but regardless, I'm willing for the Mets to take an opportunity on him, just because he's played well when he's had the opportunity to. This is a guy who's been out there and done extremely well and played a hell of a lot of games, and hell, he's even been out there as a starter. I think Drew Pomerantz, out of the pen, might just be a high quality reliever, someone that we could really put a lot of faith in and see what happens there. We'll keep moving on. I'll talk about Aaron Loup. I like Aaron Loup. I think putting him back in a New York jersey might just be what he needs. Bring him back from coast to coast. Especially, just having that weird type of delivery. I think, sprucing up the bullpen in terms of what type of relief, what type of angles you're throwing. I don't mind it. So I think, bringing him back to the Big Apple might just be worth our while. Now, some of the other guys I'm going to mention here, I don't know how realistic, Robertson or Ottavino type thing is. Maybe they want to come back, but I highly doubt it after that debacle last season. Mark Melancon, a guy who's played in the league for a long time, been a very solid and effective reliever. Maybe we try to bring him in, see what that looks like. I highly doubt that one, though. The only other guy I really had any true prospecting for out of what I could find was Jose Alvarez. Jose Alvarez, definitely a lesser name for sure. Now, I'm going to bring up his Pro Baseball Reference real quick just because this is definitely not a guy everyone's going to know about. He's been pitching in the league since, I believe, 2013. Yep, 2013. I would definitely say he's had a very effective stretch of his career we saw from 2015 all the way pretty much through 2021. I would say with 2022 being the only real big hiccup year. Now, he only pitched 15 innings last year, which is a little bit different for him, and a guy who's been very solid, being able to pitch about 50 innings every other season of his career. Now, this is a guy I'd like to see the Mets go acquire. He was in his age 33, 34 season. guy I think I would honestly assume to be quite solid coming out of the pen. Been there, done that, another lefty. I really think Jose Alvarez would be a great signing for the Mets, something that they should definitely look towards. And yeah, that'd be quite awesome. Now, the only other thing I want to say about free agency is I know we've avoided arbitration with Pete. I hope we do sign him long term. I am always going to be on the team Pete wagon. So, with that being said, folks, I always appreciate you guys coming out and listening. I know I don't post with the most consistency, but really this is just a fun thing for me to do, and I appreciate you guys coming out and listening. It means the world to me that people even listen, nonetheless, if it's 1, 2, 7, or 8, 30. I don't care. I'm just happy that you guys come out and listen to me and you enjoy the podcast, enjoy hanging out with me. So, with that being said, your favorite Idiot Zero, is wrapping up the show. So thank you for coming out and listening, and see you on the next one there, folks.